Thank you for letting me come to speak to all of you that are presidents of clubs and organizations. You probably, I know Al has seen me, and a couple of you have seen me. I've been going out and talking to clubs as part of my goals and objectives for St. Mary's Development Corporation. How many of you here know who St. Mary's Development Corporation is by a show of hands? Okay. And you know, we've been around since 1989. And St. Mary's is started out by Sister Rose Wildenhouse and Dick McBride, a business leader. They saw they had a call to support the issues of poverty in our community by by helping seniors and looking at housing conditions for seniors. So I gave you a great little flyer. I heard some of you talking a little bit about it because the aging statistics are pretty profound. In particular, what's happening right now is that we are having a tsunami of people reaching the age of 65. Baby boomers are at the spot where they're hitting that age. And so in particular, what does that mean for us as a society? It means we have to address those issues that go along with the aging population. In particular, we know that the aging population is going to live another average 18 years past 65. So if you're looking at people retiring and what they're retiring on, there isn't really a good outlook in most cases. And that is because a lot of our senior populations haven't saved for retirement. In fact, 40% of our population has no income beyond Social Security to retire on. So what we are finding, and Sister Rose and Dick saw this coming, was that a lot of our seniors, in particular the middle class working American, who was our general laborers, our secretaries, our school teachers, not so much the school teachers, but some of the general laborers who didn't save, didn't put away for retirement, didn't have a retirement plan in place when they were working, and so consequently they now hit retirement and they have nothing to retire on, and they're relying solely on Social Security to get them through their retirement years. What that means is they're finding that they have very little to live on. They've gone from earning a living to essentially having just a real small income coming in some cases like $435 a month versus what they were bringing in a job. So this is a huge shift in lifestyle change and ability to survive. So what Sister Rose and Dick saw was a need to provide housing for people, affordable housing for people hitting that point in their life. We didn't have that here in the Dayton area, and so they set out to begin that process of finding ways to provide housing. They did it, their initial property that they started with was St. Leonard's Community. I don't know how many of you know that St. Leonard's was started by St. Mary's. And in fact, we bought it from the Franciscans for $1. Sister Rose and Dick McBride wheeled it a little bit with the Franciscan brothers and said, listen, you know, we want to buy your property. They said, well, it's worth a lot more than that, close to $500,000, and we would have to think about that. And so they did, and came back to Sister Rose and Dick and said, we'll sell it to you for $1, but we want you to raise the capital that you need before we turn it over to you. So Sister Rose and Dick McBride set out to raise over $500,000 to be able to do the renovations necessary to make St. Leonard's what it is today. Now, we don't own the St. Leonard's property. We sold it and moved on. Sister Rose and Dick moved on. In 1989, there was some changes in federal regulations that allowed for tax credit properties. How many of you are familiar with the concept of tax credit properties? Not too many. So basically what happened was the federal government said, listen, we want to help those living in poverty by providing housing, so we're going to issue tax credits through the banks so that developers and builders can build housing at a lower cost so that the rents can stay low. And so that's exactly what we do. We apply for federal funding through the tax credit program and are awarded funds. Recently, we were awarded $11 million for a project that we're building in Huber Heights and in Riverside. We have 2 ongoing projects that just are getting started. So we use those tax credits, we get them, we sell them to investors who then get the tax benefit for the tax credit. They get the depreciation value on our property, and they get the investment strategies of a nonprofit, supporting a nonprofit, which is what we are, nonprofit organizations, real estate developer building housing for seniors. So that is the strategy in which we use to build housing. But one of the mission focus of our organization isn't just about building housing, but maintaining and sustaining housing for seniors, because the people that live in our buildings live on less than $15,000 a year on average. We have 32% of our residents live on $10,000 or less. So what does that mean? After paying rent, they live essentially on $5,000 a year. And if you can imagine what it'd be like to living on $5,000 a year, you're going to be making some very crucial and critical life decisions. Do I eat today? Do I take my medicine? Do I pay my utility bill? Do I, pay for that bus token? Do I rent a cab to go to my doctor's appointment? All of those kinds of critical life decisions are being made every single day by our residents. And so consequently, what happens in the particular case of our residents is that those decisions can also cause them to either become homeless or in a bad health state or something like that. So part of our mission focus began in 2014. We started what we call resident services. Resident service coordinators in our buildings work with our residents to help connect them to services that are necessary for them to sustain their housing. And they do that by connecting them to services that are already available out in the community. Meals on Wheels, transportation assistance, utility assistance programs, different kinds of agencies and organizations that are already out there helping seniors. We just simply connect them to those services. I'll give you a good example, and then I don't think I have too much more time left, so I'm kind of keeping it real short. I'll give you one example of a gentleman who we recently helped, and then I'll let you ask me a couple questions. We have a guy who we didn't really, most often, and keep in mind that our housing is independent living. So we don't go door to door by our resident service coordinators and ask people, do you need help? We allow them to come to us in our buildings. We have offices in the buildings, and they can come to us. So this gentleman came to one of our service coordinators and said, I need your help. I've been paying my rent by selling my plasma every month. Okay? Rent is based on income. He had zero level income. His rent where he was living was $25 a month. So he was selling his plasma both to pay his rent and eat. When the service coordinator said, why haven't you come to me sooner? He goes, well, I really didn't need to. I was doing just fine until I got sick. Well, he got sick and he couldn't give plasma. So she said, well, let's talk. And in the course of conversations with him, she discovered that he was a veteran and that he had a job for nearly 25 years after her service. So she began to try to figure out what his situation was. His wife had died 5 years before that. He had become kind of a transient. He had lost all of his identity, his paperwork. He had no proof of his identity. He didn't have a birth certificate, no driver's license, nothing. So he couldn't apply for anything. So she helped him get his identity. She found out from who his employer was. They happened to have his birth certificate on file, which happened to be a Korean birth certificate in Korean, by the way, because he was an immigrant who became a citizen, who joined the service, who then had employment. So she was able to get his birth certificate, his Social Security number, and get him signed up for Social Security and VA benefits. He now has close to $2,200 a month coming in. That's a huge change in life for him. And what's really great about his story is that he's so grateful that he's turning around and buying bus tokens for the people in his building so that he can make certain they don't have to struggle either. So our service coordination program is funded solely by donations, and so I am out going around to all the clubs and organizations talking about what St. Mary's does to bring people up to speed. So if you want me to come and talk to your club and organization and help us get the word out just what St. Mary's is all about, I would welcome that opportunity. Any questions? Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. That was awesome.